Luke 2 verse 22 to 35. Jesus presented in the temple. When the time came for the purification rites required by the law of Moses, Joseph and Mary took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male is to be consecrated to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. Now there was a man in Jerusalem called Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was on him. It had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before he had seen the Lord's Messiah. Moved by the Spirit, he went into the temple courts. When the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him what the custom of the law required, Simeon took him in his arms and praised God, saying, "Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and the glory of your people Israel." The child's father and mother marvelled at what was said about him. Then Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, his mother, "This child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too." These verses in Luke demonstrate great faith, hope, and obedience. In these 13 verses, we read of a shift from the time of living under the law, where they were awaiting the promise of a Messiah, to a time where God's promise is fulfilled. Jesus was born to a Jewish family who had lived in obedience to God and to the law of Moses. When it was time, his parents took Jesus to the temple, as was customary, as we can see in Leviticus 12. At the appropriate time, a woman who had given birth was to bring a year-old lamb for a burnt offering. But if she couldn't afford a lamb, she was to take 2 doves or 2 young pigeons. This emphasizes that Jesus was born to a poor but faithful family. Here we read about Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was waiting for the consolation or comfort of Israel, and was promised by God that he will not die before seeing Yahweh's Messiah, the Lord's Christ. It's not made clear at what stage of his life this promise had been made to him, but Luke notes that Simeon was filled with the Holy Spirit, and when he was moved by the Spirit to go to the temple to see Jesus, he obeys. As he held Jesus, Simeon says what is now known as Nunc Dimittis, meaning, "Now let thy servant depart." Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. Here we see God fulfilled his promise to Simeon. Simeon heard God and responded, demonstrating great faith and obedience. With his words, Simeon is declaring the fulfillment of prophecies in Isaiah that the Messiah is a light for the nations. This was the Messiah that he had been waiting for to fulfill the law and the prophets. Pastor John Piper notes that Luke wants to illustrate that there is no conflict between the law and the prophets and the new age of the Messiah. He shows this by depicting the most devout people under the old era as the most receptive to the new era. Simeon addresses Mary and gives a somber message that there will be division in the world and in society because of Jesus. God's salvation would not come without suffering and a cost. At Christmas time, we so often focus on the birth of Jesus in isolation without looking at the full significance. We can't look at the manger without looking at the cross. Simeon's eyes had seen the salvation of God, the fulfillment of God's promise, the glory of Israel, and a light of revelation to other nations, and declared that he could now be dismissed in peace. This Christmas, let us remember that by the Father sending his Son as a baby to the world, Jesus brings glory to Israel and revelation to the nations. We are no longer under the law. A new era has dawned. Salvation is here. God keeps his promises.